So we have Mars night, Mars hour, and the moon is exactly squaring Uranus. But rebelliously enough, I actually want to talk about Pluto. And am I rebelling Uranus? I don't know. um, but Pluto has ingress into Aquarius. This is, kind of like the big news. I wonder what about like the banking collapse, because everybody's like banks are going to collapse and stuff like that. I'm like, oh sure, like that's gonna happen quite in the first days, and I other stuff have happened, and the first thing that was exposed was that the COVID was a military operation by NAVO, and that was by a government official in Netherlands. Now, I have predicted that some of the Pluto stuff are going to be hidden at first, so we might not know what actually going on, because that's also Pluto. It's hidden at first, and this is why you don't hear that exposure being discussed, on a worldwide stage. Um, but there is something. I think it seems like everything is just going the way it was, and so we're probably not aware of the changes, um, and why the exposure for pandemic is so spot on, because Saturn, the ruler of Pluto, is in Pisces, which is the conjoining of something hidden and something viral and medical. And so, hidden military operation, when Mars is opposing Pluto and Mars in Leo, um, and coming from Dutch government, okay, so it's kind of like continuing on from the Capricorn to the Aquarius. Um, and I was sure that that exposure was a spin-off, but we didn't even hear about that spin-off. So I guess that was, either it was an unsuccessful spin or it was just like genuine. We don't know. Um, but that's the stuff I mainly been hearing about. Okay, the big event that we were maybe expecting um, is kind of like not yet. And so I find this, maybe it is too early to say, and so on, or we simply don't hear about it, which can be very reasonable. So exposure was the thing. But another thing I want to talk about with Pluto, and I'm in my Pluto square. So when it comes to Pluto, often it's discussed as something hidden. And it's not false. Because Pluto is such a slow moving planet, it usually tends to be seen as that which is hidden, that which is secret, that which is taboo. But Pluto has been also about exposure and authenticity. And this is where we have to remember that Pluto is about the essence of something, not the image of something. For example, when Pluto was in the big sign of the image, which is Libra, then this was the time that the internal power dynamics within relationships and marriage were exposed. We started to talk about rape within marriage, non-commitment, okay, various commitment styles, and that was not Uranus, okay, that was Pluto. So why people cheat, and the rape, and we also began to legislate about the internal dynamics of marriage, and I think it was even the beginning of discussion of psychological abuse, which will later Pluto in Capricorn will continue. But that is to remind us that Pluto is not about the image, but actually about essence. So, for example, if we take Libra, Libra is all about knowing how to maintain an image, And it's also about justice and trade. So it's about an equilibrium, but it can also, on a superficial way, can be the superficial. It can be both a superficial balance to make something look like, for example, Bibi Netanyahu was Prime Minister of Israel. He's Libra, and he was being notorious for using statistics and data in a way, the way you would use makeup, but not necessarily on. I wouldn't say not on a beautiful woman, because essence of aesthetics is people shine when they're loved. But the thing is, um, it's kind of like he would use it like makeup, but he would not use it like makeup on a beautiful woman. He would use it the way he wants something to look. So you want to think about an avant-garde makeup, okay? Or you want to dress like the Joker, then he would put a statistic like the Joker. Or when you want to dress like I don't know, throw whatever character, okay? Wednesday, then he would throw the statistics like that. And this is a master of image. And when it came to when it comes to Pluto, while Pluto can be power associated with visibility, image, justice, or making things seem right, it's also about deep exposures. Okay, I think that was the generation that began to kind of expose the juristic system, taboos around also our judges. How does the Pluto Libra generation is the Pluto that discussed what do judges do in court to children that suffer sexual abuse. Okay, and I'm not even talking about like the Deming files or the aqua files, which was 96. It was later. The Demic was already in 1973, and I think that began then, and then kind of like were brought up to the surface later. But definitely Pluto will not allow us to maintain an image of something. Okay, I can say as a Pluto Scorpio, and Scorpio is a lot to do with our deep psychology. And one of the things that I was shocked is that when there is sexual boundary violation, people can have symptoms of bodily arousal, which is actually the body trying to remediate the shock. And so that's one of the challenging psychological things. You go from Pluto Libra. Why do people cheat to boom? The Pluto Scorpios. But this is one of the challenging things for people to heal, because there is a psychological connection. There's a body-mind connection, and the body-mind simply tries to bifurcate and change. And this is the basis on which they place child assassins and MK Ultra and espionage. So, okay, that's like the Pluto Scorpio won't just let you say, for example, when I went through the pre-Me Too thing, I wouldn't, if I had a Pluto Libra that was suing for sexual harassment and completely forgot the fact that she was physically sexually harassed, because she was dissociated. I wasn't even talking about harassment. I was talking about the cult, and I found it like the inner child me found it funny, because when people are mind controlled, they act very funny. Okay. And so you see the difference between a Pluto Libra going through the Me Too, going to heuristics and so on, and then blocking me when I spoke about like the Mason, because they're family Mason, very likely, like, not very likely, it's family Mason, okay? And me going through that, and I'm like, well, I have to give a chance to this person to get out of the cult. And it only like a decade later finding out more of like why I was targeted and so on, which I also discussed on this podcast. But the thing is that Pluto will not let you maintain an image of something. It would not let me just say, yeah, he was sexually harassing me, sue him, because it's essence. What about job? What about my next role? Where am I going next? How am I actually changing from the core the issue and the situation that caused me the horror that it caused? Was it that person? Was it collision between my upbringing and that person? Okay, going into the depth of deep because it will not allow you to remain on a surface level, and it will not allow you to have too many things hidden on the long run. Okay, Pluto is also to do with the cold, with psychic attacks, but also just hidden taboo things or authenticity, things we are ashamed to talk about. And when we grow that authenticity and look within, there's actually a lot of wealth. Okay, there's actually a lot of genuine power. Is not in having power over someone or submitting to someone, which is also a form of power, but actually in a free person need not oppress another. Told by a retrograde 0-degree Pluto. And so now I think that with the Pluto ingress to Aquarius, that quality of Pluto, that it won't let you stay in the image or cult-like sciences, as Feynman called them. And I called him out on that because that's applying to physics as well, and nothing like M theory to demonstrate that. But the thing is that he was still within the cult, so he was whistleblower. And we're not going to be allowed to maintain the image of science. However, this is a time where both attempts to hide science, to hide the news. I don't believe nothing happened financially on the ingress. Okay? I don't believe that those were the news and that's it. Okay? Very likely certain things happen and we know nothing about them. But if we are expecting that to be stocks, no, there's something hidden, there's something different. But so yes, Pluto is also signifying of those hidden things, but don't count on hidden things to be hidden for long. For example, the best example I love to give about it is Switzerland. Switzerland has always been a tax evasion hub for both, let's say, Nazis and Jews. And when it was asked about to retrieve the money, it was like, what money? Okay, but it's like, we will hide your money from taxation, from everywhere. We don't mess like with anything. And then in recent years, Switzerland, I think it was Swiss Bank, gave complete exposure of all the people that were having account in Switzerland, including CEO of Lomi Bank in Israel. Is the biggest bank in Israel, and other people. And so we wouldn't expect Switzerland to do that, but it did. And that's a part of the cycle of Pluto. And so having a natal Pluto retrograde is something that I knew kind of very early on, that those hidden things don't remain hidden. Okay? So if I had, let's say, a tendency to be, scorpionic, investigative, this and that, there was also the tendency to be authentic and to try and really see into what my patterns are and so on. So that I'm completely whole with myself, okay? And so this is very important, especially for those who will try to maintain an image of science that is not actual science, okay? Double-blind, whatnot algorithm is an image of science. And it's not authentically looking into the science. The scientific revolutions don't come from dogma, and they often are interlinked with changes to the dogma. Okay, sometimes technology is the road between innovative science and conservative science. This is late Larry Loudon, 1990s Larry Loudon. And that was the theoretical framework for my thesis, and I still say that, but I will go as far and say that as much as people don't like to hear the word Feyerabend when it comes to philosophy of science, and if you ask me, Shili, what that means, well, he said a sentence that when it comes to scientific innovation, if it works, anything goes. And the if it works is matter, because people just say, oh, anything goes, and it's like, no. If that yields scientific breakthrough, then that works. And scientific breakthrough, even if we look at Kuhn, we understand that there is a linkage between the method and the methodology of science and the epistemology. How do we know that we know? And even the ontology, the unit of analysis, changes, and those changes are all interlinked with scientific revolution. Now is the time where we will hear about scientific revolutions, but there would be strong inquiry to the essence. When you think about the although it does move, as one of those people, okay? I have renovated in some sciences. It's just so. And I think that this is way less grand than we make it to be. It's just like, hey, if you study science for long enough, you will innovate. And if you don't stick with the academia that tells you to salami everything, you will innovate a lot. And that's nothing unique, okay, in any way, shape, or form. But you will see that those innovations are, first, there's attempt to control them, attempt to do this, attempt to that. Because if, God forbid, you know that all sex work is sexpionage and all espionage is sexpionage, and that is being made through trauma, and you don't need trauma to have remote viewing. Actually, trauma blocks your ability to do remote viewing correctly and fragments the information like the fragmented soul of the raped person. Then we understand that we've been doing espionage wrong entire. And it doesn't matter which type, if it is business espionage, if it is governmental, political, or any type of basically intelligence, because espionage is intelligence. The only line that people put between espionage is intelligence, and intelligence is when United States forces Julian Assange to sign an espionage act in order to get out of Belmarsh, and oh, by the way, you cannot say anything about Trump anymore. Okay? And I'm saying that as one of the people who simply wrote to Trump on X when he came back and said, hey, like that person helped you with your career because he exposed stuff about Hillary. How about, okay? So that's completely transparent. And there was an entire movement to get Assange out, and of course that's not outside of the cult. It's not an exo-cult planet. And so Pluto, what we need to remember is, yes, it's secret. Yes, it's taboo. Yes, there are attempts to control. But if we are counting on that, to the secrecy to have longevity, I'd place my balls in different baskets, okay? Because especially in an air sign. And so for those who still try to control the image, okay, even of themselves, and I always like to refer it back to like a personal example, so it wouldn't seem like I'm bashing others when I say something. It's not like coming to demote others. I was realizing there was a thing about framing, or the ways that I've been framed, that have been really hurting me to the point of like housing and stuff. And I'm not the type of person who takes a look at like my image or that. Like, I barely take a look at the mirror, to be very honest, okay? But the thing is that has come to a certain place, and I was at the breaking point where I was like, fuck it. Somebody plagiarized my business name and tried to milk information out of it. Like, it got so ridiculous that I'm like, I said, fuck it. Now I'm going to expose everything with the names. I'm already doing that anyway. There was no... There really was nothing. It was a very satirical moment because I'm already exposing everything anyway. It's just about self-healing and remaining alive. And so I just said, well, now I'm going to expose everything, everyone, and I don't have access to juristic representation that is free of satanic abuse. Oh, and actually, you don't either. And that was like a big moment of me being explosive with rage. Completely forgetting about that, I actually reached out and exposed something of an international scheme to perhaps assassinate someone, where I said no to espionage, and managed to somewhat escape. I'm still dealing with that. But I was just looking back, and I was like, oh my God, when like my actual exposure, my actual reaching out to a person, because I saw that something is messing up, that there might be psychically attacked as well, had nothing to do with that previous post where I was like, now I will expose all of you, and I went and did that. When I went and did it had nothing to do with that kind of like, you put me to the place where I have nothing to lose. Now I'm going to expose all of you. But then it was like, I was doing that before that, I was doing that during that, and I was doing that after that. Nothing changed. That is Pluto. Even when I was doing something, it's like, hey, I'm gonna take my power back regarding to how I'm being framed and so on. Even that was not what was actually happening. There was this weird thing when I was like, I kind of feel that person is also psychically attacked. I kind of feel I know the name of the person who does that. I kind of feel like it's time to reach out and talk about why is that happening, and it might save some lives. Like that, they might be targeted by this person, so they deserve to know the name, even if that person is mind controlled. And at that moment of exposure, there was like zero ego. It was like, there is this weird thing that's happening, just so I won't get into like, weird assumptions and kind of like weird things. So it's like, let's just communicate what's happening, okay, and put it out there. And so at that point where that very person tortured me and did horrid things, and I'm like, but the person that did that is also mind controlled. And the issue is like, okay, the point is right now to see maybe that exposing that can save a life right now. So that's more important. But to be very honest, I was just doing that. I was just reaching out and speaking that of something I thought to do, and then I didn't know, like, should I, shouldn't I, and forgot about it, and then I was doing that. But that had nothing to do with the previous post, and it had nothing to do with like vengeance or ego. It has nothing also to do with like savior complex. It was just like, I just did it. Okay, that's Pluto. Pluto will not let you, how should I say it, will not let you be in controlling position. It will have to be authentic. Stand in your power, yes, but the power comes from authenticity. And this is where I think a lot of those that have been trying to maintain an image, even though they had great skill in doing that, both when you use it benefically and both when you use it not benefically, Pluto is requiring authenticity. And it's the same all over. Okay, it was the same in Capricorn, now it's just ingressed into Aquarius, and we have a new type of authenticity when it comes to sciences, when it comes to the waves, when it comes to the nervous system, to mind control and psychology. Okay, the square between Scorpio and Aquarius is the human nature versus the nature of robotifying people. Okay, and mind you, when I've been dealing with like scorpionic people, like literally Scorpio people, and that are the two thingy, like the MK Ultra, okay, to 33 or whatnot, of the visibles. And I was like, my God, this person is so scorpionic. So they would analyze themselves in terms of the human nature, and I would think like, but that's also the MK Ultra. So there's the human nature, there's the MK Ultra, and there is the genuine tension. Okay, there's genuine tension of the inner complexities of the human nature, which is also complexity of trauma, and the programming, which they use also sexual trauma, to to program a person and to create distinct personalities and mind control. And then there is the human experience of that, and there's the amount of complexity and to stay in your body is so challenging. So added to that Pluto is still sextile in Neptune, so exposure, leakage are benefic to authenticity. With the sextile, it's benefic to your authentic self, which basically means unmasked from ego defenses, from dissociation. If I can think about a time where I was removing psychic attacks and sexual assault psychic attacks, and like boom, they wanted to target me, to do espionage, to assassinate Peter. Okay? That's it. I did not know that for a decade. And all I was doing, I was defending myself psychically, boom, another insight. Okay? Also, when I was looking at the picture of like Peter with the two, with the two symbol, okay, the code symbol. Before I was that, it was like, you don't have access to that. You don't have access to that. And I see this picture and I'm like, yes, I know. Did Peter. Okay? So, it's kind of, how should I say it? Often, in that sense, Pluto is kind of like a gravity point where you can't avoid it. Okay? You have to know that. You have to face that. You have to understand that. And you have to expose that. Okay, and exposure is not about of other people, but it's also about the self. And if that is interlinked, then you will see that, and you can, by exposure, untangle that. Okay, so this is where I say Pluto is not about the image of science, the image of psychiatry, because we're going to on the image of neurology, neuroimaging. Okay, it is about the core changes, the scientific revolution, authentic scientific revolution. Us being surprised at what is coming from us, what is the nature, what is the feelings, what is the thoughts, and aware of mind control. Okay? The nature, people talk about mind control. When a person is controlling others, they are mind control themselves. Or it's just the nature of control. If you are not in your mind, if you're controlling another person's mind, you are not in your mind. Okay? That means that somebody else controls your mind right now. That's, the man in the machine, or the person in the machine. I've been dealing with that for decades, since 2007. I met this wonderful musician, and he had very weird communication style. So some of it is culture, and some of it is housing situation. Then I was thinking of it like, hey, that person was living with their parents. I was also living with my parents, but way younger than him. And to get out of his parents, to make sure he gets along with who he lives, then he would have to find a girlfriend or get married. So this, of course, this creates commitment problems, right? It's a lot of responsibility. Now, again, I'm not saying for any commitment style. I don't know my own commitment style completely, but it's like, hey, doesn't the housing situation change for how the relational patterns go? And then that could create a persona that needs people, but afraid to commit. And that in itself can drive a person crazy. And the pressure that men had to not live with their parents. But it's not just the external pressures, like we need to have our own space. And a being targeted individual, being put at 40 in a space where I have to live with my parent, where my parents still have to arrange the space for like my room, is like, that's total ritual abuse, where I pay for an apartment but I can't sleep there because I'm targeted there. and I can't like take out the things because there's nowhere to put them and where to leave and stuff like that, because it's targeting. So it's kind of like, this is just so very fucking odd for a situation. And you see, that's the thing with Pluto. It won't let you rest until you really authentically expose everything around the circumstances, the situation. And in Aquarius, whether it is about being outcast, whether it is about scientific stuff, whether it's about feeling alienation, feeling aliens in general, technology, like mass technology, the nervous system, and the sextile to Neptune adds a flavor, okay? So it's knowing when to be in our power, when to surrender things to just be, and when to surrender the fact that you can just surrender it, which is so important, okay? Lessons from a recovering CPTSD person that once upon a time it was considered, what was it, borderline of radical acceptance. So radical acceptance is bringing back the radical acceptance, bringing back the surrendering the fact that you can surrender, having compassion for not having compassion for yourself, all those weird entanglements that you need in order to heal. They can be very relevant if that is in any way associated with like the 12th house or the 8th house for you, or simply your Pluto Scorpio beginning to look at this. And so don't expect things to not be exposed, okay? And don't expect to have too much control over like the image. Even when you are defending yourself, it's kind of like the authenticity essentially is what drives through, because you would want to be seen authentically and respected authentically, okay? The issues of rebelliousness, and then we have the Neptune. We also have the sextile to Uranus, which is already perfecting, and this is where things are going to be sudden, a sudden authenticity, a sudden liberation, a sudden something has to, release. Some energy block has to release itself, and so we're gonna have a lot of explosions of rapes and rape culture. It means that anything to do with academia, with the science, with global structures, the expandable children, the sexpionages, and anybody who's been doing such things, been involved with such things, that is going to be exposed. Because Uranus right now is on Beta Persei, but it's also Uranus Venus. And the conjoining of Uranus and Venus in a world where the culture of will and consent is not even known to people, you're going to have sudden eurekas. And mind you, this is everybody's father, mother, spouse, both men and women, by the way, a daughter, son, a colleague, boss, a favorite, a musician, favorite, it's everyone. And I like to bring the handsome Adma here, because handsome Adma is the person who was a whistleblower on Joris Deming and the entire like global intelligence thing. I think handsome Adma is not aware of what he exposed, and that's the thing. He was born into these incest cults, castrated, psychologically tortured, forcibly wed to someone who was also tortured, and because she was also tortured, then she would be programmed, and so she would be raped by men, but she couldn't have sex with her husband. And so handsome Adma, he saved her from this. He escaped. He lost his Dutch passport. He did everything for her, and he keeps calling her a bitch, a whore, a bitch, a whore that denied him sex. Okay, he was born in 1948, and so you see, this is not an inherently like abusive man. He did everything for her. Okay? He was tortured because of her. He was castrated. He was raped and had had his sperm taken out and then castrated. And like horrible things. And he made sure that she gets out of Netherlands, to get out of the situation of the snuff film and all that. And then he still says she's a bitch, she's a whore, she denied me sex, she this, she that. So you understand, people knew nothing of course, a person who's programmed to and raped under these programmings is not they don't even exist. So talk about sex. You also wouldn't be able to have sex with her. If she would be able to have sex with you, your entire body would begin to jump and flashback. Okay? Just to, just to make it clear. But this is something that I like to keep in mind, because if people like Handsome Adma, who are like the greatest whistleblowers, did everything for the people, the poor women that would caught up in this weird ritual abuse and snuff film cult and so on, for the global intelligence, okay? If that guy had no idea of willing consent, okay, then imagine, okay, your fathers, your daughters, your sisters, yourselves, and how this entire revolution that actually needs to be here, okay, and add to that the dissociation factor, the programming factor, and the fact that it's also emotional experience, the dissociative factor, and the fact that healing is both to speak, and you might have uncontrollable speech, and this is a part of healing, must be allowed, cannot be repressed, okay, and not to force to speak about the trauma. So you see, completely different to juristic process. And it's not just juristic, it's to stay alive. So the Pluto-Uranus Neptune is also a good chance to curate, to purge this. And you have to understand, with Pluto, if you try to restrict it, okay, if you try to restrict it, it explodes on you. Very much like Uranus, but with Pluto, it's a different type. It's an inner core atomic change. Okay? And so the more people try to put control on someone, the more that someone, and I speaking as that someone, it's like, I don't even understand why am I alive, but then that exposure, that leakage, that thing comes out, and it is something that is fated, okay? It must be exposed. Do you think that I wouldn't like to, let's say, control this a bit? Wait 10, 15 years for people to understand what I'm talking about when I say MK Ultra and psychic attack, not just in astrological community that are all Masons, and then start speaking. Of course I would like that, but that doesn't work. Okay? And so with Pluto, yes, it is about like people trying to control something, but Pluto is about, it's not about surrendering that control, it's about really growing inner authenticity and understanding that which is we're ashamed to talk, we're afraid to talk, is a psychological taboo, we won't be understood, we won't be this. It's just like surrender it and stand in your power, and then you find out that you actually, for your authenticity has a power. It's like a drawing magnet to something that's actually wealthy and healthy for you. So with Uranus, we're going to have this facilitation, these eurekas, okay, to try to control the revolution. And then stuff happen, okay? So we're gonna have also unusual forms of authenticity, exposure, and see if your life, if your legacy is building something that is the extinction of humanity, and you've been doing that for decades, you'd have to surrender it. Don't come complain if you built on slavery and you plan this for 100 years. Don't come complaining that shit is, being disintegrated. Pluto loves disintegrating. Pluto loves disintegrating these structures. And this is not the usual. Pluto is also trining Sedna. Okay? Don't expect to have food when you control the food of others to make them put like vinegar, or not vinegar but toxins, so people will not be able to eat it. Don't expect to have a lovely meal after doing that. Okay? But also there is the flood. It's like we have to tend to so much that there is the flood, where we just surrender things and allow it to be. And that's the Pluto sextile Neptune. And surrender the fact that you can't surrender sometimes here. Blessing. So yeah, thank you for watching.